with Chris
Shei.
Shei.
Yeah.
That's well pronounced?
Yes, well pronounced.
Okay. Chris, what do you do these days?
I'm working with Swansea University on a hybrid program that I created from 2011, which is named MA in Chinese English Translation and Language Teaching. And research-wise, I've been...
That's a 1 year MA or 2 years?
That is a 1 year.
Yeah, okay.
Good. What they call taught master degree in the UK.
Yeah.
So a student come here to work for just 1 year and get a degree and go back home to China, most of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
But apart from that, you're doing a ton of handbooks.
Yes, I am. Yeah. You want to hear about it?
I think we should, yes, because they're important, I think.
Well, it all started with my publication of my first large volume book with Routledge entitled An Introduction to... it's actually named Understanding the Chinese Language, a comprehensive linguistic introduction. So it received some attention, and Routledge editors were pleased with my work. So they subsequently commissioned me to edit a much desirable handbook called the Routledge Handbook in Chinese Translation.
Which has just come out.
Which just came out, actually at the end of 2017, but they have put it 2018 on it. And it collected 37 chapters written by Chinese translation scholars all over the world, including those working in Hong Kong, some from United States, some from the UK, a couple from China, and a few from Taiwan. I think one or two from Australia as well.
Chinese scholars all over the world.
Yeah. So it's kind of a work putting together all the efforts on Chinese translation in the last few decades.
You're involved in other future handbooks as well. Can you just tell us about them briefly?
Yes, so following the publication, or at the same time when I was editing book, I saw the necessity of another handbook, which is in Chinese discourse analysis, because like Chinese translation, Chinese discourse has its particular flavor in the overall area of interest. So yes, they commissioned me again to edit this second handbook from me. Routledge Handbook of Chinese Discourse Analysis.
That's true.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's the second one.
And then?
I happened to see a handbook being compiled by a different team in the US, which is called Routledge Handbook, I think, of Chinese Second Language Acquisition. And at that time, I was going to propose a book on the Chinese language teaching side of things. But then collectively, I brainstormed with the editors now quite familiar with me, and we thought it's advisable to output another handbook in the Chinese series, which is called Routledge Handbook of Chinese Language Teaching.
Right.
Yeah, so
that's three.
That's three.
Right.
Yes.
There was one more?
I am hoping.
Okay, right.
Yeah, I am currently in contact with Oxford University Press. It's still in incubation stage, so I'm not going to...
Okay, so we won't divulge.
Yes, but I'm thinking about a bigger project.
Okay. I'm just interested in this handbook thing. We're in a phase of handbooks everywhere.
Yeah.
You're doing the Chinese, but there are many, many more. Every aspect of translation is now getting a handbook.
Yeah.
Why? What's happening?
Well, I know. I think you know. This is also something with which I want to answer your first question about desirable research topics. I think every language pair has its unique problems, which needs unique solutions.
Mm-hmm.
Because as you can imagine, there are so many language families in the world, and Chinese being very different from Western languages.
Mm-hmm.
So the translation theory and practice applicable to the Western languages may not be easily transferable to the Chinese and English language pair. So
So that accounts for your books.
my book, and I believe there's also a need, for example, for Arabic translation,
Yes,
which is gaining popularity very quickly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you think translation studies as a discipline is different when applied to Chinese as an academic discipline?
In terms of this is a big question. So, for example, we can answer from the theoretical side. We can answer from the practical side. If we approach the problem from theoretical side, you would think about what has been done so far in the Chinese tradition about translation. Unfortunately, little has been done or has been understood about the history of Chinese translation theory. And currently, most of Chinese translation scholars follow the Western tradition.
Yes.
I think there will be increasing attention on the classic Chinese literary or translation theory as well. But so far, people are working on how to adapt Western translation theory to the Chinese environment. Because as you can see, the linguistic side of translation is only the part of iceberg we can see, but there's a lot of underwater like culture, tradition, and so on. So in this way, Chinese differs from many Western languages, and in doing translation, we do not wish just to compare superficial linguistic tokens. We want to understand the difference between culture, society, and so on. As I will mention later on, genres of translation also very important. For example, the translation of traditional Chinese medicine. That is an area which is completely different from what has been done so far in the Western tradition. New theory, new practice has to be invented.
Very good.
Yeah.
Let's go back in your mid-20s. Where were you? What were you doing?
Well, that was like my last life, because I wasn't doing anything related to linguistics in my 20s, or even anything academic, because I was at one time I was just someone doing shipping, commercial things. I wasn't.
You're making money.
No. I was just someone sitting at the desk making documentaries.
All right, okay.
Making documents, a small one. So
which country then?
I was in Taiwan.
Okay, good.
Because
you're from Taiwan.
I'm from Taiwan.
Yes.
I was not a hard-working student when I was studying at the university.
So what happened? What changed?
Yeah, it was quite practical because you work in those low-pay profession. You won't be satisfied with your life. At one point, I was throwing packages in post office. So that's not a very satisfactory life in terms of monetary reward and spiritual well-being. So I decided to come back to academic world when I was over 30, I think. So I started pursuing postgraduate degrees when I was relatively mature.
And you've moved to Wales?
Yes.
From Taiwan directly, or was that a long time?
Oh, well, I had to go back to 1996 when I obtained my MA degree in linguistics.
In Taiwan.
In Taiwan,
Yes.
I got this government from. I got this scholarship from the Taiwanese government, and I can pursue a PhD in linguistics for 4 years with tuition paid. So I went to Cambridge to obtain a master degree in applied linguistics, and I moved on to Edinburgh University and studied there for my second PhD in informatics. Yeah. So after that, I went back to Taiwan to work for 3 years before I applied for a job with Swansea University.
Okay. But you weren't working in translation, or the PhDs were not in translation?
Yeah, I started working in translation when I worked with Changchun University in Taiwan for 2 years, teaching translation there. It's year 2000, at the turn of the century. So at 2003, I got this lecturer position with Swansea University, and I moved there.
Very good. Do you see yourself as a linguist, or applied linguist, or translation scholar, or is there no difference between those two?
I think they are very interrelated. I am at once both a linguist and a translator. I did things both theoretical and practical. I translated 10 education books from English to Chinese, so I'm a professional translator. And I'm a linguist. I analyze problems of translation from linguistic point of view. So they are, well, you can concentrate on translation, you can concentrate on linguistics, but at the end of the day, they are closely interrelated.
What kind of research do we need, do you think?
I think because my focus is currently on Chinese translation, so I think that there is a need for focus on the heterogeneousness of translation issues. We can no longer look at translation as a single problem, but we must divide our attention to different genres, at least in terms of Chinese translation. So, for example, if you want to do literary translation well, you have to know comparative literary theories. You have to know what's happening in Chinese literature, what's happening in English literature. You have to be familiar with the background of all those literary works in both sides. And we have to know how much background we need to know in order to output ideal translation, which is readable to target readers, and which the original reader will think it's all right. And another example is, I mentioned earlier, traditional Chinese medicine. This kind of translation is very culture specific. So in the handbook, the first one we were talking about, I included a chapter on translation of traditional Chinese medicine, written by American, actually Sonia, she is both academic and a practitioner of traditional Chinese medicine. And she proposed a kind of translation method which is very much what I'm thinking about. She called it living translation. Living translation, by this she means when you are trying to translate traditional Chinese medicine, you have to get together a team. This team will consist of not only translator, but experts from both sides, who knows about Chinese medicine, who also knows about how to apply Chinese medicine to the American world, to the English world. And together with this team, you will decide what you want to use this translation for. Well, this is has to do with scopus theory as well.
Yes.
But it's more concrete. So I think for each genre of translation, going back to the old question of text types, but now we must I think we must dig deeper into each text type according to different language pairs to decide for each genre of translation what what amount of background knowledge, expert knowledge is required to be used in which circumstance. It has to be clearly defined. Another example is the culture going abroad movement of China recently. It's been, as I understand, not very successful. So if we applied team translation to this kind of translation task, I believe it will be much successful. It will collect not only translator, you will have literature writers from both sides. You will have marketing people. You get together a team and you output the best translation. So I think that is the way we should move on at current point of time.
Very good. Thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you.